Thank you. And then move it down to the next scene.
Okay, welcome. I will go ahead and give you the heads up. This is the first time running this one, so maybe a little rocky. But this is Decepticon, which is my clickbait title to say that it is Deceptive Technologies to Derail OSINT. I have to say this, it's on every slide. These opinions do not reflect those of IBM. With that being said, I do work there. But more relevant to this, I'm the 2017 DerbyCon Social Engineering Capture the Flag winner. With that, there's a pretty substantial amount of OSINT associated with this, and based on the information I was finding about some of the targets, it's like, yeah, we need to do something about this. And then at a con at the end of last year, I sat in on an anti-OSINT talk, and some of the stuff that the guy was saying just blew my mind, and not in the right way. Which I'll address that a little bit later, but yeah, that's a little bit more about me. I have my blog and podcast, Advanced Persistent Security, and I tap out a lot in jiu-jitsu. They say you either win or you learn, so I learn a lot. That's just the trophy, and with Chris Hadnaggy. So the goals. I want to talk about where OSINT lies, where I can get OSINT on a target. Then we'll talk a little bit about deception, decoys, canaries, to some degree encryption. It doesn't really deal too much in the deception world, but it is relevant. As well as social media and not identity and access management. We're talking identity management, like having your identity stolen, that management, not your login credentials. So basically, looking at this, what is OSINT, right? It is nothing more than open source, not always free, but it's open source information you can get from easy to find public sources. So the CIA actually has defined all of these materials. This was actually, for the most part, copy and pasted directly from their website, and I figure if they've got intelligence in their agency's title, they must be an authoritative source to tell me what is open source about their business. So yeah, the internet, first and foremost. Newspapers, trade journals, conference proceedings. If you want to know what kind of research someone's up to, like in the academic world, just go look at IEEE conference proceedings and who's presented, because in that world, you're expected to brag about what you're doing. So then that gives me a target to call you and say, I'm a reporter with the New York Times, I would like to talk to you about this, and then start asking you all kinds of wild questions. I'm a journalist, so therefore you can say no, and that's okay. I respect this, but I really want to know. My readers want to know. I'm doing an expose, and I don't work for the New York Times, but they don't need to know that. Photos, metadata, that's a big one. Social media today has gotten better about metadata, but they used to just let it hang out in pictures online. You could just pull it down, find out everything. Now, from my most recent research using Facebook, you can actually find out if it was taken on a regular camera, an iPhone, or an Android. That's about it. Which that gives you a little bit of a direction on where to go, but nowhere near what it could have been, such as location data, usernames, that kind of stuff. And then finally, geospatial information. During the SECTF, from Eastern Tennessee, I drove around my target's facility on the information superhighway. And how did I do this? Google Maps. One of the flags was, who do they use for deliveries? Well, there was a big, boxy brown truck backed up to the building. Well, there's the flag. Because there's not many companies that use big, boxy brown trucks. So you can do things like that. You can find out where dumpsters are. You may recall with Strava, recently, they outed some private military base in, I believe in Afghanistan, because people had been running laps around the base, and they saved it as base perimeter run. And the thing is, Strava's terms and conditions said, we can make this public. They didn't filter it. So, who is at fault there? Is it Strava for publishing it? Or is it the people who did it, who's been through the OPSEC training, and their annual training? You know, can you please put the CD in your computer? My CD-ROM's not working. I think that's how that training goes, right? I'm sure somebody in here's taken the annual DoD awareness training. But it's there. This picture is probably the most accurate depiction of society as we know it today. People would rather look at the world through the lens of Facebook or any social media. Facebook's just very convenient because their logo is like that of a periscope, rather than to go outside and experience it. I mean, there are people, I will say this with good certainty, there are people on my friends list, I can tell you where they're going to eat every day of the week. I can tell you if their bowel movements are regular. It's disgusting, but it's the society we live in. And basically this plays into the whole thing. We overshare things. We're always connected. For example, last year at BSides Huntsville, Valerie Thomas was giving a talk about this physical security. She had this thing in the size of a trapper keeper. She was cloning badges with it. Well, she mentioned a company by name, and I'm still seeing ads for them on LinkedIn. Jason Street mentioned Fifth Third Bank at BSides Indy last year. You want to guess what I see ads for on Twitter all the time? Thanks. Everything's listening, and it's calculated. You can mitigate some of it you're stuck with. That's just the reality. So basically, what I'm going to try to do is point you in the direction of some resources so you can understand what's out there about yourself and then take steps to minimize it. So to kind of take a little bit out of Michael Basil's book with his Complete Privacy and Security podcast with Justin Carroll, you can go as far as you want with this. You can go full tinfoil hat if you want, or you can just implement it lightly. It's just your measured risk, how much time and effort you're willing to put into it. For the average person born and living in the U.S., I can probably get a picture of the exterior of their house within 5 minutes, knowing just their name, their email, their phone number. There's 3 resources that are out there that I've really figured out how to make them work for me. And with that information, I'm just going to go, I'm going to find it. Bam, done. So I've stopped kind of doing that because it is kind of creepy. I'm not going to lie. But there are good uses for this type of stuff as well. But I want to share with you some resources to start with. If you want to start checking up on your own footprint, I recommend inteltechniques.com and osintframework.com. I've also attributed to the authors as appropriate, with the exception of the Harvester. I forgot who wrote that. But nevertheless, these are tools that I highly recommend using. On the tool side, ReconNG, that's probably my daily driver when we're doing this. I'll take your username, I'll take your email address, your company's domain, and I will just start to unravel it. During the SECTF, I found that there was an employee who had left his email signature intact as he emailed a list to complain about their storage issues. So I took that email address, put it through ReconNG, tied it to a username, tied that username to a GitHub account. I now know that they use Netflix ICE to estimate their AWS usage. On top of, they had some scripts for Nagios servers, a few things for Apple, and Red Hat satellite server synchronization scripts in this GitHub. He left the company in July 2016. The last commit to these specific repositories was June. So he started in a completely different language 3 months later. So it's safe to say you can enumerate the technologies and the scripting languages used in that organization because this person had poor GitHub hygiene. Because the targets for SECTF, they were Fortune 500s. You can't tell me they can't afford a GitHub account, right? They cannot afford to stand up a private GitHub that's not out for everyone's consumption. Furthermore, you can't tell me, well, you could. There are people out there that probably do this, but the probability of someone actually needing Red Hat satellite server synchronization scripts in their home environment is pretty slim. People may use Nagios at home, that is possible, but it all ties around the corporate side. Datasploit, that's another really fun one. It's got a really cool plugin that actually searches WikiLeaks for whatever you're looking for. I was doing OSINT on a target at my previous employer as part of a social engineering engagement, and I found that they had 30-something thousand documents on WikiLeaks because they had been doing business with someone that someone didn't like. Obviously, I'm posting this to Big Book, as you can tell. I'm keeping people as anonymous as possible. Onion scan's another one because people tend to be a little on the dumb side. They'll use the same SSH footprint for the dark web as they will the public internet. So that aims to match those up and say, hey, you're dumb. But the intent of the tool is actually, hey, make sure these things don't match. Nevertheless, the harvester, I don't really use it a whole lot, but I'm starting to kind of play with it just because there's good stuff there. In terms of training, Michael Basil has his OSINT training. Chris Hadnagy, he does some OSINT within his 2 social engineering courses. Justin Seitz has probably the best Python course that you could possibly take. It's only $50. I've taken it, and it's geared toward OSINT. Like, you start learning how to interact with like the Twitter, the Facebook APIs, like even how to get the keys, how to interact, and then you're doing it in Python, so you actually get meaningful things out of it. And I mean, last but not least, I mean, Mike is involved with BSides NOVA, and he's got his course coming up here with Stance that is an OSINT course. So I think the beta is coming up. So a little bit more about gathering the OSINT. Where can you hear things? Just as a story, a few Christmases ago, I was living in the Atlanta area. I was in a Macy's, and I heard this guy on the phone. You know, you can't do OSINT and not be nosy. I mean, I am nosy. And I start hearing a sequence of numbers. And if I recall correctly, it was something to the tune of 4-867-5309-9035-7684. I'm like, that's 16 digits. Let's see if they ask him to repeat it. 4-867-5309-9035-7684. Okay, duly noted. Dude, you should have went to the bathroom. Granted, if you want to use that credit card number, have at it because it's not going to work. I use it with scammers all the time. If you think about what the card number really is, 4-867-530-9999 is Jenny's card. Restaurants. There's a restaurant in Knoxville where I live that, quite honestly, there's this one area by the bar. You can sit there and you can hear all kinds of business deals going down. It's like, I heard this one guy talking, and I was like, that dude really needs to read Christopher Hadnagy's book about social engineering because his sales game is weak. He was trying to use fear and authority to get someone to buy. I'm like, yeah, this is going to go south. And then you hear, thank you for the pad thai, I'll be in contact with you. And I was like, let's see what he says under his breath. Anyway, show of hands, who in here does not have a social media account? Siblings, do they have it?
No.
Parents? Friends?
Yes.
Okay, you're on there, sorry. Hate to break it to you. Back windshields. I can't count the number of times I've nearly crashed my car trying to take pictures of these. Forums and job boards. Indeed told me so much. When you post your resume to Indeed, it may take your name out of it, but your company's data is there. So if you upgraded from an Avaya to a Cisco VoIP system, and your company name is in your resume, I'm going to know what your company uses. And I'm going to use it against you. Maybe. It depends on how the scope's written. Search engines and social media, that's pretty much the given. So you've got to have good Google food, period. If you're going to do OSINT, whether it be on yourself or anyone else, you've got to have good Google food because, I mean, let's face it, they're the monster search engine. We don't say, let me Bing that for you because they're the most advanced, right? We say Google. Not to say that you couldn't get alternative perspectives going to Bing and DuckDuckGo, but the Google spiders are probably the strongest. Again, job boards, forum, GitHub, social media, review sites. So whenever I was targeting my SECTF target, when I was actually on the phone with someone, I was like, happy Friday. What time do you get out of here? Oh, 4:30? One of the flags was, what are your working hours? He's like, oh man, I work until 5:30. I can't wait to go home. I got this new craft beer and it's the greatest. Why did I say craft beer? Everyone in that geographic region likes bourbon and craft beer. Those are simple enough to be able to talk about and make conversation. They're also foodies, and I just couldn't do that one. But review sites, you can see someone complaining about something. It wasn't on a review site, but it was on Twitter. One of the executives of this company flamed an airline on Twitter for making them miss a meeting in Amsterdam because they were delayed in New Jersey. Okay, what can we do with this? If I'm going to social engineer you, I'm going to call you as United Customer Support. I'm going to go to their website. I'm going to find out the phone number. I'm going to spoof it. I'm going to call you. If that doesn't work, I will buy like united.info for like 99 cents. And then I will send you an email asking about your customer experience. It's just the fact of the matter. So with this, when we're talking about OSINT, I'm about to start transitioning into the actual Decepticon portion of how do we protect ourselves. But before we do that, I want you to understand how it's collected and what you should be cognizant of. So I always have to rehearse this, but you've got to Ermagard collect the dirt. Yeah. And then don't be like the South Park Underpants gnomes, right? When you're talking about collecting, we hear people, it's like step 1, collect all the OSINT. Step 2, step 3, profit. Okay, what is step 2? How are we weaponizing this to make it meaningful? How are we refining it? And in this case, how can we derail this to make it difficult, if not useless, to an adversary? So, before we get into the actual fun stuff, I didn't almost crash my car with this one. I took this one off the back windshield in a flea market parking lot. So, what can we tell about this family? Well, we can see that Dad either works out or he likes to make people think he works out. He's probably got a dad bod. 5 a.m., 5 p.m., you're probably going to find him in the gym at least 4 days of the week. Probably. Or he's going to be in his garage doing insanity workouts, or you might find him in a CrossFit box. Maybe. Mom's a school teacher, so if you're thinking of this from the perspective of, this is the back of my car, how could someone break into my house? What information does this give a potential intruder? Well, Mom's a teacher. It's a federal holiday. I'm not going to that house. Mom's not at work. Oh, parent-teacher conferences this Tuesday? Well, okay. I'll go Tuesday at 5 o'clock. John looks old enough to where he probably plays competitive sports. He probably practices 3 to 5 days a week. If he's on a traveling team, there's a good chance on the other side of this card, there may be a sticker that tells you what the name of the team is, and these days those teams have websites. You can find out their schedule. Neil, he's a skater, so roll up in a pair of Etnies shoes, maybe a Misfits or a Dead Kennedy shirt, and educate him about what music was really like back in the good old days. He'll thank you forever if you introduce him to the Misfits. Jessica's the curveball. You can't tell much about her age or her interests. You can't tell if she's old enough to stay home alone. You can't tell that she has any hobbies. So that's definitely a curveball. And then Beaker and Ruby, they're dogs. Pretty obviously, right? Ruby's a hound. Hounds are going to make noise because that's what they do. Because I'm actually a nice person, I'm very ethical about many things. Most things. All things, actually. I don't advocate harming the canines. So if you were going to break in, take some dog bones. Just something. Don't harm the dogs, but do something to keep them busy if you were going to do this. I don't make it a habit of breaking into houses, but I think seeing something like this gives you insight as to how someone may think. So, more about the collection. We're talking about the company data, right? So we've got locations. You go to Bloomberg's website, look up a company profile, you're going to find out who the executives are, their address, their phone number, and you might even find out email syntax. Move that over to some Google Foo, and you're just absolutely wrecking it. You just do a focused search for that company's website and look for @company.tld or phone number syntax 123-867 on that site. You're going to find every marketing person's email address and phone number or salesperson because it's their business to make that public. Vendors love to tout their clients, right? I mean, some clients consent to it, some don't. But that tells me if a vendor is saying this company uses our product, okay, well, where are the vulnerabilities in that product? But we can look at affiliations. You're part of the ISAC. And then, of course, the people. And that's where you come into play. Because you're not just protecting yourself. Protecting yourself is first and foremost, right? You're not, at the end of the day, if it's protect yourself or protect the company, 85% or more are going to protect themselves. But at the same time, the things I'm about to provide you will allow you to protect yourself and the company. So, corporate accounts, right? I love PR people accounts. They almost never share anything. Why do I love them, though? They follow the people who do. They follow executives. They follow vice presidents. They use their real name. So I'm like, okay, well, this person's really bored. Ooh, there's their CFO. Ooh, he just went on vacation to Belize. And then that brings up the key employee. accounts. Here's some of those Google foo searches I was talking about, if you want them. You just got to be a little creative with that. Go take a look at the Google hacking database. Read Johnny Long's book about Google hacking. It'll give you the syntax. There are far more things to do, but this is a good place. And this is if you're looking at a company. If you run your own website that can have your own data, this is a good thing to do to yourself. If you actually do what is called metacrawler in Recon NG, you will actually find all the metadata associated with those file types. So it will actually parse that out for you. So Goldmines, again, repos, resumes, social media of current and former employees. There was a guy that worked at the company for the SECTF. He had a picture of his previous and current badge for the company. And it was public. I didn't befriend him to see it. And his caption was, "I look a lot more like a serial killer now." I'm sure his company really liked that screenshot that they saw in the report too. But I got bored the other day and I went and checked out his profile. Apparently he still works there. Okay. LinkedIn, I always make the joke, everybody's the chief executive something on LinkedIn. They're the president or vice president of something. So let's talk about the training. So you've got your technical mitigations. For a website, you can do rate limiting. You can have canaries, right? I'm a huge fan of honey job descriptions. Let them go off and try to exploit Oracle ERP version 12.2.5 when you don't even use Oracle. Put it in the job description. Let someone apply. If that's what their skill set is, just automatically send them an email. So, sorry, thanks for your time. Put more than you need to in your job descriptions to begin with. And then whenever you have someone trying to pop you based on Oracle ERP 12.2.5, you can drop the ban hammer. Disinformation, we're going to get to that. Segmentation and DLP. It's a mitigation for OSINT, but at the same time, that's one of those things where we're trying to prevent people from just putting crap out there. Encryption, yeah, it's not going to do everything, but it can do some things. If you're hemorrhaging files that could be used for OSINT, but they're at least encrypted, more than likely whoever's after you is going to move to the next target. And then your standard training policy procedures, personal device, acceptable use. You want to train people about insider threat, the social engineering threat, the OSINT threat, what the technical outcomes could be, right? That finding out Oracle ERP version 12.2.5, then moving to exploit DB and finding that there's a SQL injection and server-side request forgery vulnerability on that platform. Not that I know anything about checking that. But nevertheless, train them. Let them know. Most people just aren't aware. Recurring training. Do it quarterly. Don't even mess with the whole once a year to check the box. People forget. Whenever I was in charge of administering training to about 100 people, I just had to maintain their training records. I would say, hey, by February 1st, this has to be done. Valentine's Day, I'm still chasing people in their belly aching. Oh, it's so time-consuming and I'm so busy. It's like, I was looking at your web browsing history. You were looking for elegant women's handbags. And it wasn't even Valentine's Day yet. You just got to make it digestible. Hey, can I have 15 minutes of your time? Let's go. Let's do this, right? So much easier to digest. You want to have specific training. HR, accounting, sales, they're all expected to open email attachments. HR vets job descriptions before they go up on the website. You probably want to train them on what to look for and what to make sure is there. Have a playbook. For example, we're posting a Microsoft database administrator position. Okay, well here's what we're really looking for. Put these in there too. Number one, some of those skills may translate. Number two, you're not saying we are a Microsoft MS SQL shop components, right? Help desk, yeah, same thing. They'll tell, like, if you can get a somewhat meaningful conversation and make it through that first hurdle, you can find out a lot from them. But with incident response, integrate this. People need to know exactly who and how to report anything to. Is it carrier pigeons, smoke signals, phone, text? Do you want them to walk over? The only one I would say to not do is email. Because you must assume you're compromised. What do you want them to do with the computer? This is a little bit more applicable to social engineering, but nevertheless, it's still a meaningful rant regardless of the topic. Do you want them to unplug it, power it off, disconnect it from the network, put it to sleep? What do you want them to do? Most of these people are not security professionals. Most of them will not even be IT professionals. Don't make them have to try to be when this situation occurs. Don't punish them for doing things like clicking a fish, especially if it's on a phishing campaign. You want them to report it. Don't beat them over the head. If they know they can report something to you without reprisal, they will report. If you make a game out of it, they will sell out their own children to try to win whatever you're giving away. I recommend giving away a copy of Tim and Alan's ransomware book. It's a good light reading. So some considerations. What's the end game? Is this ethical? Is it legal? When you're running it on yourself, yeah, it's legal. In most places. I'm sure there are some countries in the world that it's not. How do you protect your own data, right? You've collected all these things about you so that you understand your own footprint. How do you protect it? When do you destroy it? What value could someone else get from it? So this transitions into basically the OPSEC, which is the meat and potatoes of this talk. You've got to know your enemy. And I'm not saying like take them out to dinner. Because, I mean, I can barely tolerate going out to dinner with people I like, much less enemies. But what capabilities do they have? Where do you work? Why would someone want to collect information that could compromise you? Right? It's like the episode of Law & Order SVU. I actually just watched it yesterday. Detective Rollins is back on her gambling habit. She goes off to some bar, some black market club that has drinking and gambling. That's her two vices. She goes like $15,000 in the hole. They compromise her. They get her to escort someone to a place, find out the key code to get in. Then they send a criminal in to absolutely wreak havoc. I'm not going to go through the details, but basically she was compromised because she had advice that she allowed to be exploited. This is the same concept. Are you someone in a law enforcement or government role? Right? Are you a public figure? Are you perceived to have a lot of money? What have you done, if anything, to know about your actors or to even get your actors pointed towards you, right? Have you been in the news for winning the lottery? If I ever won the lottery, my name would be Emmanuel Goldstein. So if you ever see Emmanuel Goldstein winning the lottery, it is not me. But nevertheless, what has triggered this that would make someone want to do this? What have you done to protect yourself? What vectors could they use? And that's the whole reason I went through the whole, here's things I would look for if I were actually after you. What vectors would someone go for? For you, you don't have social media. So I'm going to try to find you in the forums. I want to see if you're in any Slack channels. Actually, you might have a Steam account too. That look tells me I'm probably right. It's all good.
Maybe.
Only on Tuesdays.
Right.
Nevertheless, because of that, what will help them find you? At the same time, we're not trying to hide. We don't necessarily want all the data to go away. That's not practical. It will make it impeccably difficult if you have to get a security clearance, if you're trying to get credit, anything. If you cannot be found, you're going to have a hard time. So when you do this, here are some blogs that I would recommend taking a look at. They're written Leslie Carhart, Micah Hoffman, Josh Huff. So these are 3 excellent blog posts about this is some of the steps you may want to take. And for the benefit of those with flash photography, if you want to opt out of everything, there's the opt-out link. So both links go to the same place. Some people are just uncomfortable with short codes. So if you are, there's the full link. The other one, there it is. So, and that's another Micah Hoffman resource. So opting out is very important, but you've got to do it on a periodic basis as well. It's painstaking, It's time consuming. You've got to click the link. You've got to go in. You've got to provide them information to verify you are who you say you are. That's problematic as well because I can't opt out of Equifax. That's a big problem. And that's one of those organizations it's really hard to feed bogus information into. So I'm going to go ahead and go on a limb and say the probability of identity theft is probably going to go up within the next 3 to 5 years. I'm going to say probably at least double because of that one single massive, disgusting breach. So, secure internet usage. I'm not saying don't use Google, but if you're going to be ultra privacy conscious, you probably don't want to use Google. You probably want to use something like DuckDuckGo. Calculate the risk, understand what it's worth to you. Anything you put into Chrome, Google's going to see. Anything you search for in Google. Anything you talk about in Gmail, Google Docs. It's all for them to see. That's just their business model. I joke that they're like the civilian version of NSA. They both want to know everything about everyone. But calculate those risks. It may be acceptable to you. It may not be. I'll be honest. I have a Gmail account. I don't care. I don't discuss anything of that sort on it anyway. And now it's just started getting so much spam, it doesn't even matter. Use a VPN. There are good ones out there. ProXVPN, ExpressVPN, pardon my French, but hide my ass. That's another one. Those are all paid VPNs. I would not go with a free VPN on your cell phone. More than likely, they're going to do what Google does, but they're probably not quite as ethical. Another thing you could do is use Streisand, which I'll discuss that on the next slide. Be cautious of your browser extensions and add-ons. Right now, we're seeing a lot of those are actually doing mining for cryptocurrency. Some marketing websites are even having it to where if you have a password manager browser extension, it's actually trying to get you to autofill it. It just has a block hidden that says email. It's like, If marketing teams are doing this, how long will it be until the malicious people do the same thing and prompt for the password as well? Of course, vulnerability management, that's just one of those things. You don't want to get decloaked because you didn't want to update Windows. Cloud storage, most of it's not encrypted. Google Drive is not encrypted. It's obfuscated and sharded. That is the terminology that they use. So look at either encrypting things yourself before you put them up, or using something that's already encrypted. And then, of course, file metadata. I don't need to know your username because you shared a picture somewhere. There are applications out there that you can run against your files, and it will scrub the metadata out. It will just put bogus information in it for you. So, to mention the Streisand Effect, it's open source. It's on GitHub. There's the link. You have your own. You get your own cloud provider, and you run through the script. It will actually make an API call to that cloud provider and spin up your own Streisand server that will actually contain OpenConnect or OpenVPN with L2TP or IPsec, as well as WireGuard. It has a Tor bridge, secure shell access, as well as STL and shadow socks. The only thing you're paying for is your cloud usage. So you can connect anywhere in the world. You can have as many devices on it as you want. You configure in the beginning, you say, I want 5 devices, you get 5 keys. You link up to it, bam, it goes right through. Be cautious when you do this, though. I did a proof of concept the other day, and I put mine through the cloud provider I was using had places, of course. I chose India, but then I kept getting put over to google.in, and you will have to worry about your location settings when you do that. So if I did Amsterdam or anywhere else, but the other thing is you also have to be cognizant of the country that you're emulating coming out of. For example, I was connected to ExpressVPN out of Hong Kong. I forget what I was doing. I'm sure it was nothing shady or dealing with OSINT at all. In fact, I know it was dealing with OSINT. But I was listening to a YouTube playlist, and I'm a big fan of the band Dimmu Borgir. It's just Norwegian black metal. Apparently, it's illegal in Hong Kong. I could not listen to a single Dimmu song on YouTube coming out of Hong Kong. I moved over somewhere else, and it was another interesting one that was blocked, but it was weird. But be cognizant of that, because wherever you're dropping off, you might be blocked from what you're trying to access. There may be laws associated with what you're doing. Encryption's not illegal here, but it may be illegal there. We may have an extradition treaty with them. Be cognizant of it. There's no sense in putting yourself in prison for trying to be private. So, transitioning into deception. So, let's look at it from the perspective of, within the field of deception, we've got deception and we've got disinformation. So, with disinformation, you can run sock puppet accounts. That's where you're going to have social media. Have multiple accounts, a wide variety. Make it challenging. If I'm hunting you, make me work for it, please. Don't have mutual friends with your real account. I outed somebody the other day just as a joke. They swore up and down. We were in a troll group on Facebook, and they swore up and down that was their real name. And I was like, no. So then I did a little research. I found another account with a similar name. One mutual friend. Their dad. That's not my account. Would you have a twin? Because you got the same profile picture, too. Yep. There are methods to have disinformation within your email, within your phone, and even secure payment systems so that you're not having to broadcast your own card number out there. Within the field of deception, I primarily look at it as you're a decoy, a canary, or a honey something. So let's look at disinformation. So basically, with this, we're just making it more complex. We're not trying to hide. We're not trying to catch anybody. We're playing hard to get. So use multiple browsers, because there's agent strings that come on the back end of this. If you get redirected to a website, they may see your browser, your browser agent string. Use a VPN, pop up all over the world. Use a variety of VPNs because they might know those IP addresses are associated with ExpressVPN or ProXVPN or Hide My Ass or your cloud provider of choice if you're using Streisand. Use a variety. If you feel comfortable, do it on your phone because they're going to be in a completely different IP range as well. If you think you're being sneaky on your phone and using a VPN, make sure you have cellular turned off because it's going to take priority, by the way. If you travel a lot, create your accounts in every city. This is my third speaking engagement of the year, and I'm up to 6 Facebook accounts. I've got a month before I create a new one. But anyway, put that information out. If your birthday is February 30th, 1973, tell people your birthday is March 30th, 1973. So just make sure that your time frames are appropriate. Misspell your name. Lie about your location. Don't use your real picture. I don't. For accounts, you can have Hushmail, ProtonMail, Sudo. Sudo is an app you have on your phone. It's not super user do. It's just called Sudo. You actually get a phone number, an email address, and you can use SudoPay for the credit card piece as well. So you can always go with pictures of you on an account with someone else's name, pictures of someone else on an account with your name, or the double blind. Or you can just go real and real if you want to. Your choice. Yeah, you can do some pseudo-anonymous payment with Bitcoin, but there's a lot of people watching that right now. Consider an LLC, like a New Mexico LLC. It's not tied to your name, and it's about $100. Public records, be cognizant of what you're doing and how that will create public records. Data breaches, credit reporting. If you're in a publicly traded company, you might be on the SEC forms. If you pay in cash, you're going to avoid a lot of it, but you're going to create a lot of headache too. Because you're going to have a lot of trouble getting a bank account if you're going to try to be that private. So, you remember I mentioned the talk I saw last year that just made my head explode for all the wrong reasons. Here are things you don't want to do. And these are 3 pieces of advice I saw within that talk. So I had Michael Basil on my podcast a couple of weeks ago, and after we stopped recording, I was like, hey, what do you think about this? He's like, there are probably 5 people in the entire United States that need to apply for a new social. More than likely, whoever was giving that talk is not one of them. 5 people out of the entire U.S. that need to apply for a new social. Legally changing your name. That has to go through a court, right? Sounds like public records to me. I don't care if your name's Andrew Johnson now. I know it used to be Tom Thumb. Thanks. Avoiding social media altogether. You can't control what people are saying about you if you don't have it. If you have a social media account with your name, and if nothing else, just a picture of you in a post that only you can see, Facebook's algorithm will start trying to tag you in pictures that people have of you. People don't even have to see the picture you post. Just play the game. So moving into deception, we've got to speed up because my timing's a little bit off. Honeypots and honey things. They're interactive. They're going to actually they're going to emulate the data, and the attacker's going to do something, and it's going to record that activity. The easiest honeypot or canary, whichever way you want to look at it. Set up your Windows administrator account. Everybody said, like, people in here are familiar with the STIGs, right? Yeah, this is Northern Virginia. What am I thinking? So one of the Cat 1s in it says, disable the administrator account. No, don't. Totally. Give it a simple 6-character password. Leave it activated. Set its logon hours to 0. Tune your SIM so as soon as you see a successful logon attempt from administrator, the host that just got logged into and the host it came from, you can go ahead and write those off as compromised. Someone's been playing in Mitigations. It's simple, and it costs you nothing. It might cause you some headache from your auditor if you're working in a DoD environment and actually attempt that, but you'll have to pass that through your management anyway. With decoys, they're not sophisticated, they just waste time. Disinformation is somewhat of a decoy. And then, of course, Canaries, you're looking at that more for the monitoring perspective and less for the time waste. So if you want to play with honeypots, ADHD is a good distro for that. It's currently being renovated. It contains Artillery, Honey Badger, several other honeypot networks. I'm a big fan of Modern Honeypot Network. That's the types of honeypots that hang out on it. When WannaCry went down, I actually got a sample 3 days into it off of that. The one thing is if you're using DNA, which I'm a huge fan of, make sure you change the banners when they connect, because otherwise it says, welcome to the DNA of honeypot. In terms of Canaries, you've got these 2 paid solutions, Red Canary and Canary.tools, and then you've got Open Canary that's free. I'm all about some free 99. Got a few odds and ends before I wrap it up. So encryption, use it. You've got your VPNs. Use your email encryption. Proton Mail, if you're emailing someone else at Proton Mail, it's end-to-end encrypted. Consider your encrypted messaging apps, Signal, Wicker, Wire, WhatsApp, Facebook secret conversations, your cloud storage, again, full disk encryption. Determine if you need to encrypt a single file or directory. And with PKI, if you're dealing with PKI, be cognizant of the data you're putting into the certificate as well. So that's basically the end of Decepticon. I want to bring something up to your attention. I'm working with Brian Austin with a project in conjunction with Peerlyst called Through the Hacking Glass. It's a mentorship project. You come on board, you will either be a mentor or be assigned a mentor. There's some level of background investigation going to be associated with it. No, I will not be the one doing it. But basically, we're going to help people transition from one part of their technical career or even into technology. We're not trying to step on certification or academia's toes. We're trying to fill in the blanks that is missed there. Too often, people are going for entry-level jobs, and they want you to have 8 years experience with Ethereum when Ethereum is only 4 years old. Well, we can't help that part, but we can actually get you some experience with something. If you're trying to get a networking job and they say you need some experience with some Cisco, we'll expose you to it. Here's my future speaking engagements. Right here, if you want to go to Hacker Halted in Atlanta, here's a coupon code to get in for free. You can get 25% off their training as well. And the final thing, I am donating my birthday to the Innocent Lives Foundation. I tried to do it on Facebook, but it required me to make so much stuff public, I backed out. So I'm just doing it this way. If you want to donate to that, just donate and call it good. And yeah, so my birthday's coming up, but I'm not saying when. But aside from that, any questions? Yes?
You volunteer for Peerlyst, you post our stuff publicly for fun.
I'm sorry?
I was joking. I said on Peerlyst, if you sign up, you post all our shit on your site for fun.
No, not at all. No, I do post there though. I mean, I will say that there is a certain level of quality with certain things, but I've noticed the community tends to take care of that as well. So if you post something that's wrong, it typically gets fixed fairly quickly.
And like a serious question, like, I can't tell how much you do this. I saw your resume and I've noticed what you talk about. Do you know a lot of companies that are actually buying Canary deployments and actually integrating into their analysis? I mean, that's a cool idea, but I don't know anyone doing it, and I work for very small. And I like that idea a lot.
I will put it this way. A company that's actually deploying deceptive engagements, you're talking of probably the top 5% in the world. If we're going to look at it from the SANS top 20 or critical security controls perspective, more than likely they're meeting at least 18 of the 20, if not all 20, with some level of compliance. It's the companies that are doing it most are the ones that need it least, just because that's the nature of the beast. They're the ones that's going to be in tune. They're the ones paying for their employees to come out to these conferences and hear things about, man, there was this crazy guy who was talking about this weird thing. I can't believe he sideswiped into some company like that. Wow, that's crazy. And then they go back and tell their coworkers, and it's like, all right, how do we fix this? Right? So, yeah. Obviously, there are a few companies in business, so somebody's obviously paying for it, but I'm not sure who. Any other questions? Comments? Concerns? Complaints? Grievances? All right. Thank you very much.